Well guys, after all this time, we're finally taking a look at the Lenovo Legion Y720. Okay, I have to start out this video by being perfectly honest and saying that there was a time I had zero faith in gaming laptops. I bought an ROG gaming laptop back in the Sandy Bridge days with the mobile GTX 660M and was very disappointed with the experience. I'm just being honest. I had an i5 2500K at the time with a GTX 660 on my desktop and thought I was going to get a comparable experience on the laptop. That was farthest from the case. But when Lenovo sent over the Legion Y720 quite some time back, they asked for a review and, well, quite honestly, I had a hard time delivering on that because of a lot of things with life and workload. But around the time of CES, I did ask if we could borrow it a little bit longer to use through CES. And from there, it actually became a very primary workhorse as I prepared to move. So I got a lot of time with the Y720, and it really gave me an idea of what it was like to, say, ditch the desktop and go off just a gaming laptop. Now, as far as specifications for this laptop goes, it's very simple and run-of-the-mill on paper. Starting things off with specs, we've got a Core i7 7700 HQ with a base of 2.8 gigahertz, where it spends a fair bit of time at. 16 gigabytes of DDR4 2400. The GPU is the GeForce GTX 1060 6GB, and that's not a Max-Q model, that's actually the full-blown GTX 1060 6GB. And as far as hard drive, we've got a 1TB Western Digital drive and a Lenovo branded 256 gig M.2 SSD. Both of these together make for quite a snappy boot time and general computing task. So you've got a full terabyte of storage for games and everything, but you've got plenty of storage on the primary drive for your operating system and the core applications that you're going to be running. But let's start off talking about this laptop from the top to the bottom. First off, the webcam.
So this is a quick test of the webcam and the built-in microphone array. Just an overhead light in a typical office situation.
Well, you can see there the webcam really isn't anything to write home about. Well, it's at least better than my Aspire 5, so it does have that going for it. But the screen is quite nice for the most part. We're looking at a 1080p 60Hz refresh rate IPS panel with great viewing angles. I never really felt like I couldn't see the screen. It was plenty bright enough at full brightness, reading between 250 and 300 nits. So it's good and vibrant, except the color reproduction is a little bit less than what we were hoping for a screen like this, especially something that we were going to use on the go for video editing and such. Now, our Spider 5 as well as DisplayCal rated at a 91.3% sRGB rating with a 73.1 Adobe RGB rating, so not quite up to professional level task, but it is better than your average laptop. Moving down to the body of the laptop, let's take a look at the port selection that you get. Down the left-hand side, you get the Kensington lock as well as the power adapter port for the power brick. Then you've got a LAN port as well as one USB 3.0 port and a combination headphone microphone jack. And looking across on the other side, you get an HDMI port, two USB 3.0s, a mini display port, and a Thunderbolt port, which is very nice and is going to give you expandability options in the future for external graphics cards or storage solutions, as well as, well, expansion opportunities. So it's really nice to see that on this laptop. Now, moving up onto the nice textured finish, it is a rubberized texture on the wrist rest, and the trackpad is really nothing to write home about. It's fairly bog standard, has the buttons integrated into it, which I'm personally not a fan of, but a lot of people seem to like that. Moving on to the keyboard, if you're familiar with Lenovo's keyboards, you're going to feel right at home here. This one is very responsive, somewhat tactile, no click. It's not a mechanical keyboard, but it is very solid, and you know when you hit a button, it's got a nice thud to it. It is RGB illuminated, but it's RGB in zones, so it's not individual per key illumination addressable, but you've got 4 separate zones, which I'm not really a fan of, but I do like that I can have the entire keyboard one color and the number pad another color. And while selecting those colors, you do have access to the full RGB gamut, so you're not limited to just primary colors, so big thanks on that one. Now, Something about this laptop that really shines above most any other laptops, and while I don't have any other here to compare it to other than the Aspire 5, which is a budget-minded laptop, I did compare it to my brother's. He's got a Gigabyte Aorus Triton 700, and the sound quality from this laptop destroys that one. We're talking 2.1, so it does have a subwoofer and speakers, and well, to be quite honest, why don't I just stop talking for a second and let you hear what the intro in Borderlands 2 sounds like with room recorded with an external mic at about 3 foot and 50% volume. So I think it's going to be hard to deny that this thing has absolutely incredible sound, but sound is really something hard to convey in a video because of the audio source that you're listening to on. Okay, so the screen is pretty good, the keyboard is great, the trackpad is there, and the audio is spectacular. But this is a gaming laptop, so what kind of performance are we going to get out of the GTX 1060 and the Core i7 7700HQ? Well, to be quite honest, out of the CPU, it's going to range a bit. According to Cinebench, we got a single core performance score of 151, but the multi-core performance was about on average of 666. Now, it may seem like the devil's number, but it did range from like 640 all the way up to 724 based on temperatures, workload, so it was kind of tough to gauge a specific number. One of the things we did do was we run PC Mark, and according to PC Mark, the overall score was a 4424, with Essential showing 7434, Productivity showing 5868, and Digital Content Creation showing 5360. So we saw about kind of average numbers on there, so it does have the power to drive quite a bit of things. In fact, like I said, we used this all throughout CES for a primary workhorse, so it rendered all the videos, did all the editing work, and we really ran into no problems with it. Found it to be quite capable. Well, okay, Keith, that's great. What about gaming performance? Because that's really, it's a gaming laptop, so how well does it do? Well, with the built-in GTX 1060 6GB and the i7 7700HQ, we're going to start off with 3D Mark. We got an overall score of 9138 with a graphics score of 10,960 and a physics score of 8763. So very respectable scores there, showing that it's running fairly competently. What about actual game? Well, we did run it through several different games to see kind of how it performed across the board. So you can see there in almost every game we're seeing great performance hitting that 60 FPS mark at relatively high to ultra settings across the games. Now the only game that really suffered in there was Deus Ex Mankind Divided, but that's kind of a tough game to run, especially at high settings. Okay, so it games well, it looks well, and it sounds well. What about cooling performance? Because one of the things that differentiates laptops from other ones is cooling, and this laptop being rather bulky and being a bit larger than these thin and light gaming laptops that are featuring Max-Q designs, you would expect better thermals, right? Well, the CPU is quite toasty. We see it reach all the way up to 90 degrees Celsius, and that's pretty hot. And now the GPU, on the other hand, is staying at a nice cool max temperature of 71 degrees Celsius. So that's a really good temperature for the GPU, and if you're gaming, your GPU is going to be your primary workload, and it's going to stay very comfortable and allow it to maintain a much higher boost clock, which we saw this GTX 1060 sitting in the mid 1700s under the entire gaming load. I played all the way through Far Cry 5 using this laptop and had a great experience doing so. But you think keeping the temperatures in check like that could get a bit noisy. Well, this isn't exactly the quietest laptop, but the sound signature is really nice. It's more of a whoosh. In fact, take a listen here from directly behind one of the exhaust ports. So I have to say, the overall design of the cooling is quite efficient. It's easy to clean, you get good airflow, and it shoots it straight out of the back, so you don't have a lot of heat buildup on the laptop itself. The surface stays fairly cool throughout the entire time that you're gaming on. That is a great thing to have. What about battery life? We definitely have to touch on battery life. Well, using the battery life test that we used under a maximum load, we got to see it come in at 69 minutes or 1 hour and 9 minutes. Now I know that may sound crazy, but that's full CPU load and full GPU load. So those aren't going to be the type of scenarios that you're going to use this laptop under. But under what we call reading mode, so just a browser up with the brightness at about 50%, it came in at about 7.5 hours, which was great, but under real load, real life usage, I got about 5 to 5.5 hour battery life on it, which is great for a gaming laptop because the last time I had one, you weren't getting an hour and a half just by browsing the internet. Probably one of the biggest gripes that I have with the design of the laptop is the aluminum finish. It's beautiful to look at until you touch it, and now you've got fingerprints everywhere. So it's kind of a hit or miss. The lid looks good, the logo illuminates, so you know this is a gaming laptop, but it's not overly aggressive in design. But again, I actually probably would have preferred a plastic finish on the outside or some type of texture other than a fingerprint magnet crosshatch aluminum. But overall, it's a very premium laptop if it's a bit heavy. I have to say my biggest criticism of the laptop actually comes in the fact that it doesn't have an SD card reader. And I know it may sound like a piddly thing, but laptops that come in over $1,000, because this model, depending on how you configure it, can range from $1,100 to $1,600. That's pretty expensive to still have to go out and buy an SD card adapter, which is something we learned when we got to Vegas. So at the end of the day, can something like the Legion Y720 replace a desktop? Yes, it can, provided you're okay craning your neck over a little bit and using a laptop, but it did provide a very acceptable experience and one where I really didn't miss miss my desktop as much as I thought I would. So, very enjoyable. If you want to see more about the laptop in question, hit the link down in the description below. This has been Keith with WCCF Tech TV, and if there's anything you want to see more of in another laptop review, please feel free to let us know in the comment section below, as we're always looking to find more ways to test things as pertaining to the way you want to see them tested. Because after all, we make these videos for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video and it was entertaining as well as informative, and we'll catch you guys all in the next one.